it's still there. I think with climate change and the recognition that our forests are now more and more vulnerable because of the longer, hotter, drier summers, which weakens the trees. And then the storms that we're getting in the winter that can then knock the vulnerable trees over. It really speaks to not breaking the forest up into little bits because, you take a bunch of trees out in one area, the edges get vulnerable, the wind knocks them over, and now we have new edges and so on. I think there's a lot of recognition now that we need to protect our forests, especially some of the unique ones like we have on Bowen. We need to stop cutting them up into bits.
So what I hear you saying, or I think what I hear you saying, that the idea of creating recreational opportunities gets in the way of logging, but protects the forest. And that's really the catalyst of this conversation and how we got here.
Yeah, that's right. Bowen is within the Islands Trust. And the Islands Trust, of course, wants to protect nature. And it's also within our region, Metro Vancouver. The regional protection is a little different from the Islands Trust protection, although the region does have very strong ecological protection policies. But because we're a place, Bowen Island is a place where residents within the region can come and visit very easily. With a ferry, you can walk on, you can take the bus, and take the SkyTrain and so on. It really adds to the recreational opportunities, which strengthens the argument against cutting down trees. In our presentation to Metro Vancouver way back, we talked about the trail up Mount Gardner, but also going down the back and then coming back around. We're trying to convince them that even if you don't turn it into a park, if you recognize the value of the trails and get some sort of a legal protection for the hiking trails, then you're helping protect the land, because you're demonstrating that this land has value for recreation, and quiet time is part of that recreation idea.
I'm not so sure that there's much of a difference between motorized vehicles on Mount Gardner or 100,000 people camping at Cape Roger Curtis over the course of the next couple of years. But both of those actions curtail logging and protect the environment to a certain extent. Can we talk about Cape Roger Curtis and how that came about more recently? I guess this is the awkward part of our conversation. Why the lack of transparency for the park? What happened? What was your role in it?
Sure. So back, I guess maybe a couple of years ago, I don't remember exactly when this happened, but the owner at Cape Roger Curtis was looking at another rezoning with a little community in the middle kind of thing and a whole bunch of land protected. And when that didn't fly, the owners were still wanted, or one of the owners, the CEO, was, for various reasons, was passionate about wanting to protect the waterfront land and some of the uplands. And so she asked a bunch of people who had some sort of conservation background on Bowen to say, okay, how could this happen? And some of the other folks who were there had a lot of international background, and we're talking about raising funds internationally, and there's a fellow from the United Nations and so on. And I just said, well, what about Metro Vancouver? They need more parks, and they might be interested. And I guess that was in COVID time. Maybe it was after COVID time. Yeah, it would have been. In COVID, I know Metro Vancouver Parks really had a surge in activity, and they really needed more acquisitions. So I suggested Metro Vancouver, and I don't know if anybody particularly acknowledged that. I didn't do anything about it. And then I guess it was about a year ago, in January or February, I heard that Metro Vancouver actually was interested. And they were having a meeting. Their parks committee goes and visits a park each year. They take a little site tour. And they were going to go to Crippen and this potential park at Cape Roger Curtis. And they recognized, yeah, it's really beautiful. It's quite amazing here. But I didn't know what kind of price the owners would be asking and what Metro Vancouver was interested in. But I did hear words like from some senior folks who were there that, well, yeah, this is nice, but I wouldn't pay more than, and I think I heard $8 million. And I had no idea what they might be asking, but I knew it was going to be a heck of a lot more than $8 million for, what was it, 240 acres. So I wasn't very optimistic. But anyway, then it came to the board in some closed meetings late in the spring. In other words, Metro Vancouver staff was really looking at it carefully. And they ended up putting notice out to the public that it was now officially on their list of potential acquisitions. So that changed it from being something that, okay, maybe they're interested in, to something they really are interested in. And I knew that they were negotiating with the owners. Because this is a real estate deal between two other parties. Any discussions around it had to be in closed meetings, and I didn't know how those negotiations were going at all. I wasn't party to it in any way. And but I did know the discussions were going on. Then I should have done a bit of research to get the dates, but I think it was late July, maybe it was early August. Metro Vancouver put out an announcement that they had an agreement with the owners to purchase it, and that they would look at a public consultation program to figure this out. And we, of course, at our municipality said, well, there need to be a rezoning. Oh, I should say, when they were interested at council, we looked at this and sent back the message that to Metro Vancouver that our official community plan. We knew that Metro Vancouver was interested in camping. Our official community plan said low impact camping, no SUV, no RVs, recreational vehicles, and but that also that our OCP says ecological protection it was particularly important for that area. So in other words, we explained to them what our OCP says. And so then that's where it is. The discussions were in closed meetings because they had to be in closed meetings when it's a real estate deal. It was completed. Well, it's not completely completed. The payment hasn't been made, or the deal hasn't been finalized, but it's a down payment has been made, and I don't know when the closing is. I don't know when. Presumably after the rezoning process. I really don't know.
So how long have you lived on Bowen? The reason I asked the question is you know this community a lot better than I do, and this has become a really thorny issue. And I'm wondering if you can explain what you see or why you think it's become so thorny.
I don't look at Facebook. Our conversation earlier, we talked about the ecology of conversation or something like that, the ecology of discussion. And it seems like social media is kind of it's an area where bad things tend to happen. It's the algorithm for Facebook is that in order for them to make money and get advertising, they try to make it so that people keep going back. And so the loudest comments tend to go to the top of the page. And so it's a format that encourages rather than discourages kind of angry talk and outrage. And so I don't go there. People tell me about it and they say there's a whole lot of outrage. But I also know, I talk to a lot of people who say, I don't go to Facebook. I never go there. And they are, sure, of course we should have a park. Right? We need to protect that land. So I don't really know where the public is on this. I don't know because there has not been any broad discussion. And that's what we need to have. We need to have a discussion, and I'm hoping that Metro Vancouver's consultation process will allow that, where you really foster listening and where people explain what they're concerned about. That means Metro Vancouver explains what they're concerned about, and our residents explain what they're concerned about. And some obvious issues, where I don't need to be going on social media, some obvious issues are the ferry. Well, it's transportation. So it's through Tunstall Bay, but also, and really quite critically, our ferry was a dreadful mess last summer. And so it's what's really important to me here. It's not that the park is going to create a mess with transportation. It's already a mess. We can use the park as to say that, look, the ferry is at capacity already. This just won't work. We need some alternatives. So use the park as a way to push for alternatives. And the big alternative from a transportation perspective of getting people here is to be not focusing on cars, to be focusing on people and moving people with foot passenger service. And for commuters, when I was commuting a lot, I used our foot passenger service, and it was just fantastic. But it was pretty hard to run because you're just taking people one way. Commuters go into town and then you have to come back empty. If you actually have park visitors that are going to be taking the shuttle that Metro Vancouver says it would provide from Snug Cove to the park, then you could have commuters go one way on a foot passenger service, go right downtown to where the C-Bus terminal and all the TransLink terminal is. And then people could come back. Visitors could come back and take the shuttle across. So you've got two-way traffic. So in other words, instead of it being a service that wasn't really viable. It could potentially be viable, and that would be a huge advantage for commuters. But it would also mean that the people who are coming to the park are, for the most part, walking. They're carrying their stuff, or they're bringing their bikes, and they're going to bike across the island, or they're going to take the shuttle across the island. So that's why the idea of the walk-in or the bike-in camping is a part I really support.
So the devil's in the details.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in favor of this because the idea of protecting that land and not cutting it up into bits, protecting it, but also meaning that for Bowen Islanders, not just people across the region, but for Bowen Islanders, we can go down and spend time in that incredibly beautiful spot. Because, we're an island surrounded by water, and we hardly have any public waterfront lands. We've got a little bit in Stunk Cove. We've got a couple of beaches like at Bowen Bay and Tunstall Bay and a couple of others. But we don't have, like compared to, say, Vancouver, where there's a huge amount of public land along the water. And so this would be the best waterfront land that we would have on Bowen and that we would have for our people. So I've been in favor of the park, but yes, and I've said right from the start, it comes down to the details. We've got to figure out how to make this work for Bowen Island, because to have a whole lot of car traffic, it obviously just won't work. And for car traffic through Tunstall Bay, it's not that Tunstall Bay situation is going to be perfect anyway. If you had 24 homes being built, estate homes and garages and outbuildings over the next 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to be bad traffic too. So, we need to find ways to solve the problem at the ferry and the problem at Tunstall Bay.
So how are you feeling?
I'm feeling, I've had a few conversations. I wasn't really paying attention for a while, and I've now started to pay attention. I've had a few conversations, and, from what I'm hearing from people, there's some anger, but there's also quite a lot of support. So, I'm looking forward to having a real conversation where we're listening to each other and we're learning from each other, and we can go find use our creativity to find the sweet spot that works for all of us.
So what's next for David Hocking?
I'm working on other things. I mean, I'm working on climate change. I put in a proposal to Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver has a really good climate change plan, but there's action that's needed right now. And how do we get that action going? And that's what I put in a proposal on that, and that's what I'm working on. And I'm really enjoying that. It sort of lines up with the work that I've been doing for, the last 25, 30 years.
David, I really want to thank you for taking time to catch up.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Don. It was good chatting with you. I really appreciated, and I appreciate the efforts you've been doing on Bowen with these podcasts to listen to people and to give people an opportunity to hear different voices. So that's really great. Thanks.
We've been talking with David Hocking, former councillor on Bowen Island, and we're talking about the new regional park at Cape Roger Curtis that will serve all of Metro Vancouver. I was reading a post earlier today that said that during the early 20th century, more than 100,000 visitors a day came to Bowen Island, enabled by a thriving Union steamship enterprise that featured 8 Union steamships, camping shelters, cabins, a general store, amusement areas, and eating establishments. Must have been quite the party. So with a new regional park proposed at Cape Roger Curtis, and not knowing much about regional parks, I thought I would reach out to Metro Vancouver and find out more. Today's conversation is with Jeff Fitzpatrick. He's the Division Manager of Regional Parks, Design and Development for Metro Vancouver.
Good morning, Don. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you? Did you get on the trampoline over the weekend?
I don't have a trampoline, but I certainly got to out in the forest and down to the beach, which was lovely. Sort of like a natural trampoline.
It's even better. So to start, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, of course. My name is Jeff Fitzpatrick, and I'm the Division Manager of Regional Park Design and Development. I'm a landscape architect and professional planner by training, and I've worked with Metro Vancouver for about 12 or 13 years now, all in the regional park system.
So I'm curious, what called you to this line of work?
For me, it's about nature and people. Our regional parks we say we protect the important natural areas and we connect people to nature. And that human experience of nature is really what drives me at work.